A few days ago, the next Rimworld DLC was announced, Rimworld Odyssey. And while there's a lot of good bits in there, one of the most exciting sections was all around the Gravships. There were quite a few screenshots that were provided with the announcement, and within those screenshots, there were 6 different Gravships that were visible. This is a replica of the largest ship. You can see that the outside of the ship is fully symmetrical along kind of middle line here. And there are a few items that are always perfectly central to the center of all of the different ships. So that includes the, navigation console, and then the main grav engine. We've got the boosters or thrusters at the back, and there's 2 types of booster. There's a 2x2 booster and a 1x1 booster. I think these are the chem fuel engines that provide the power for those boosters. And they come in 3x3 and 2x2. I think that they just take chem fuel. There tends to be multiple batteries on each of the ships as well. There's definitely a shield unit that can be within the ship. Don't know whether that's going to be active when you land the ship, but if so, that gives the first portable shield that you can create without doing funny things with mechanoid clusters. So there's a potential way of getting shields on the ground. And then the larger ships, and only 2 of these ships have these kind of grav extension things that I've got marked with these blue stools. And they seem to be evenly distributed around the ship and are also placed symmetrically. So I'm wondering if the size of the ship is actually kind of almost like a column with where you can build roofs. You kind of put down these grav units and then it gives you an area around it that you can build. It's worth noting that only 2 of the ships do have these extension ones, so all of the others don't require these little extension grav units. Interestingly, when building it, I noticed that the type of resource they'd used to make everything in this ship was silver. So even the butcher's table was silver. We can go to one of the smallest ships that was provided in the screenshot. This one's pretty crammed in. You can see it only has 2 of the little thrusters, and then it's got, I think, kind of thruster housing where you must need to put that down before you can place the boosters. It's just got a small bedroom and central area. This ship here, which is a decent amount bigger and has kind of multiple other rooms, and again, the central area, the central walls don't need to be symmetrical, but the outside, it does seem like they do need to be symmetrical. Here is one of the other smaller ships. In a lot of the ships, they put the navigational console right at the front of the ship, but in this one, it's sitting behind the main grav unit. So I think these 2 do need to be central, but the order of them doesn't fit. And so I think this actually gives a really compact little central piece to a ship, which could be quite a neat starting point. It'll be interesting to see how flexible it is when you're taking apart pieces of the ship to extend it. So I think there'll probably be designs made where you start with one small unit and then you add bits on. I'm hoping people will be quite imaginative with that, because it would be a shame if everyone just does 11 by 11 rooms. And they've done some really interesting shapes on these screenshots, but I expect people will probably make some very cool looking ships. This is the one in the lava, I believe, which again has the navigational unit behind the main grav unit. They had 2 separate little rooms off on the sides. I mean, I think they did a really cool job in making these look really interesting. It looked to me like these solar panels were physically attached to the taking off area of the ship, which is quite cool. And this ship doesn't have a chem fuel generator, whereas most of them have a chem fuel generator. So clearly there'll be some interesting ways to power your ships. I expect that when you're flying in space with solar panels, they're always working, and that you can't go into the dark side, on the opposite side from the sun, and see a losing efficiency there. But that's something we'll have to see when the DLC comes out. And the next ship requires some caveats, because only about, this section of the ship was actually visible. And so I've built the rest in what I think it would look quite cool, given the prison guards their own little safe quarters at the back of the ship. And in this case, I've mirrored in the wings the actual kind of power sources for the ship, but that could be incorrect. It could be that they'd put something else within that section of the wing, because there's no kind of complete consistency in needing that to be symmetrical. The engines have to be symmetrical, and maybe there were some at the back of the ship as well, but the actual red and chem fuel generators and these, I think engine blocks don't need to be symmetrical. In the biggest ship they are, and so that's why I've done that in the prison ship, because it's the next closest in size. I then designed a bit of a ship myself just to have a bit of a go, and then wondered about the smallest ship that's physically possible to make. Initially, I thought this had to have space left around it so that you could place these grav wells and shelves and things, but they haven't always done that. Like with the triangle one, there's no room for expansion, and so pretty comfortable that you're allowed to do this. And I assumed this was a interaction spot with the navigation console. So can a person sleep on the floor here over that? You can't place a bed there because of the interaction unit, but would a pawn fall asleep there? I think so. Then of course you need a battery and an engine. It's going to run out of electricity at some point pretty soon. So it could be that you need something a bit more like these ones here, where you've actually got a bed to sleep in, a table, some shelves, and a chem fuel generator. It was quite fun making it as compact as physically possible. There's a starting scenario where you start with this main grav well, and so you'd never actually want to build anything this small, but it's interesting to try and work out. The next bit that I wanted to talk about was the size of the ships. So I went through and worked out how much actual area in squares each of these ships take up. This is the biggest ship. It's got 1,366 tiles, and it has by far the most engine blocks and boosters on the back. We then have the prison ship coming in as second place in size. It has to be symmetrical, and so I think based on the screenshot it would cut off about here. As it's built like this, it's sitting at about 950 squares, but it could have been a bit smaller at something like 800. And both of those ships do have these additional units that are always placed symmetrically to help balance the gravity of the ship. We then go down to all of the other small ones, which would be these 4, and none of these have additional grav wells. And this ship here, which is the one in the mushroom biome, that is a bit over 400 tiles. So I think there's quite a lot you can do with just this main gravity thing. We don't know the official names yet, because that's a pretty substantial amount of space that you can build on without needing to have any additional wells, in this case blue stools. And what's interesting is actually the amount of the engine blocks hasn't really increased. These 3 all have the same amount of thrusters. This is the only ship that only has 2 thrusters, but the amount of these engine blocks hasn't kind of had to scale up as far as we can tell. I mean, some of the ships are landed, so it could be that these ships aren't actually allowed to take off in the form they're in. The outer material that's used to create the ships always extends and connects, so this actually forms what is essentially a diagonal. In Rimworld, you don't get these little corners. It does kind of form up so that you feel like the outside hull of the ship is complete. It'd be really cool to see that potentially as being an option for other bits of building. Interior of the ships, they never do these diagonals. All of the interiors have required cornering off the sections of walls. So I wonder what would happen if you didn't, and I wonder why that is. I guess it's just to really identify that symmetrical outer shape of the ship, and when you're building it, perhaps there'll be some warnings saying that ship can't take off, it's not symmetrical on the outside. Who knows, maybe it's more flexible than that, and it was just the designers of these screenshots wanted to make the outside always symmetrical. There also doesn't seem to be that much constraint on where the doors can be. Initially, I assumed that you'd need to have, like these ships do here, somewhere where you can easily dock the ship, say to an asteroid or a floating space station. But then you get ships like the triangle ship, which is definitely complete and you'd assume ready to fly, and yet the only entrance point is at the back here with the boosters. So maybe there's always a platform you can land on an asteroid or a space station, then you can get out anywhere from a door. It was definitely good fun recreating these ships based on the screenshots, and it was, I mean, I know that I'm going to be making some Gravship designs in preparation for when the DLC launches, but it's going to be really interesting finding out about these different constraints and how the gravity works, as well as the engines and the boosters. Does more boosters mean your ship travels faster? I mean, that would make sense, but we'll have to see. So there's lots still to find out with all of that. So yeah, thank you very much for watching, and have a good day.